Hey, what's up everyone? You may remember that a couple of months ago I made a pretty unconventional video on the DJI RS3 Pro, where I showed off how you can use it to stabilize your iPhone with moment lenses to get extremely smooth video. But in that video I also mentioned that since the RS3 Pro is not made specifically for use with the iPhone, of course if you do want something that is made specifically for the iPhone, you definitely want to go with the Osmo Mobile 6, which I also have a video for, which I will link right up here. Because of that limitation and the fact that the iPhone is not actually made for the RS3 Pro, there are a couple of shortcomings. One of the biggest things that's missing when you use the RS3 Pro with the iPhone is the fact that you cannot clearly see the iPhone screen during complex gimbal shots, and so that makes getting B-roll in awkward positions and angles really tough to pull off because generally speaking you're going to be doing it all blind. And another thing to also think about is that you have to touch your iPhone screen to start video recording every single time. You can't just use the record button that's built into the RS3 Pro handle because the RS3 Pro cannot connect to the iPhone's Bluetooth. It can only connect to most cameras' Bluetooth. So that's another thing that's really important to be aware of, and one of the main reasons why you may want to actually switch to using a mirrorless system after you have the RS3 Pro. Or if you don't have an RS3 Pro and you do have mirrorless cameras, this is one of the main reasons why you might want to pick this up. But in this video, since I've progressed quite a bit in my creative journey and I've upgraded to Sony mirrorless cameras, I really wanted to come back here to revisit this topic and make an update to that video to show you guys how to set up the RS3 Pro for use with more professional camera setups. So you'll definitely want to stick around to the end of the video where I'm going to reveal my secret tips for operating two cameras effectively, even if you're the only camera operator on a professional job. So you definitely won't want to miss that. But starting off with one of the most important things for anyone who's interested in getting into the DJI system is of course going to be compatibility. And so I'm going to leave a link to this down below in the description, and I'm also going to show this on the screen right here so that you guys can take a look at all of the cameras and systems that are currently supported by this particular platform. Definitely make sure that you go ahead and do this before you go and purchase a DJI RS3 Pro or any of the RS3 series gimbals from DJI, or really any other manufacturer, because you really don't want to buy one of these gimbals and be really excited for using it for your next shoot and then realize that it doesn't do all of the things that you thought it was going to do with your particular camera system. That would be really unfortunate, and I don't want you guys to make that mistake. But moving on, since I made my original video talking about this particular gimbal, DJI actually released a brand new model which is specifically aimed at smaller productions and people who don't really want to be carrying around or need to be carrying around a big professional setup like the DJI RS3 Pro. And this newest entrant into the DJI Ronin lineup is of course going to be the RS3 Mini. So this is a really nice gimbal that has a couple of advantages over the traditional RS3 and RS3 Pro that have been around for a little over a year now. And one of the main features here is going to be the fact that this gimbal only weighs 1.75 pounds. It also has a native vertical shooting support and a 1.4-inch touchscreen with Bluetooth shutter control and a payload capacity of between 0.8 and 4.4 pounds, and that's going to be all for the price of $369. Now, that is really good, but of course there are going to be some of you guys who are going to need a little bit more, or who just want to have a little bit more freedom as far as the payload capacity that you want to have. And for that, you can step up a little bit and get the RS3. Now the RS3 can be bought by itself for $549 or in a combo for $719. The gimbal weighs just under 3 pounds, and it also has a full carbon fiber support system with all of its arms, and it also has a maximum payload capacity of 6.6 pounds and great 12-hour battery life. Or if you're like me and you really want to have the most flexibility and you want to be able to carry really heavy cinema rigs, you would definitely want to be stepping all the way up to the RS3 Pro, and you can get into that for $869, or if you want to get the combo like I have, that'll run you $1099. And so everything that I show here in this video will basically be included with that combo. And the maximum rated payload capacity of that is going to be 10 pounds. If you buy it with the combo, it also comes with the Raven Eye, the DJI focus motor, and a bunch of other really cool connections and tools that'll really come in handy for any type of rigging situation that you need to do. In the case of both the RS3 and the RS3 Pro, you also get a really nice travel case, so that'll be able to keep everything contained and protected when you're traveling from shoot to shoot. The other thing that's also really nice about the RS3 and RS3 Pro is that you get the incredibly useful auto lock system, which is really great for if you're going to be running and gunning and you're going to be constantly turning on and off the gimbal. This will basically allow the gimbal to maintain its previous calibration and balance, but just go into a sort of dormant state and lock off all of the gimbal axes. And then when you're ready to shoot again, you just turn it on, it recenters itself and unlocks everything by itself. It's a really nice feature, and I'll show that off as well. Since I had already mentioned that I have the DJI RS3 Pro, I'll be going through everything that's included in that package here. Firstly, you can see that the case that you get is very nice. It's got a padded top handle and some sturdy zippers. On the top half, you'll see a flap that has some of the smaller accessories, and you also have the bottom half here, which below this foam is going to be the main unit itself. And inside of the top half, on the back side of this divider, we have the Raven Eye. You also have a focus motor, and so that can be used for pulling focus with geared lenses or with the included gear strip if you don't have a lens that has dedicated gears already. We have an extended plate that allows you to attach your camera or any of the other accessories. And then in the main compartment here, we have my favorite tool, which is going to be the briefcase handle. This really gives a lot of extra stability and control when you're operating the gimbal. Here at the top, we have the battery, which doubles as the grip. We have the tripod base, the standard length dovetail plate with the ARCA compatible mount, and also a phone holder. Inside of the top divider, we also have all of our HDMI cables for connecting to the Raven Eye. We have some USB cables for connecting up your camera or the focus motor. Or if you have the LiDAR system, you can also connect all of that. We also have the gimbal strap, which will help to secure your lens when you're using the focus motor. You also get a 12mm rod. This is aluminum with a clamp. You get a focus ring, a set of screws, and an Allen wrench. And so now that we have everything out, I want to show you guys exactly how we can mount up a camera setup like this lovely Sony FX3 with a pretty heavy lens like this one, the 50mm 1.6x anamorphic lens from Sirui, with the Polar Pro Basecamp MatteBox system, which if you haven't seen my video on the Polar Pro Basecamp and you are interested in getting a MatteBox or getting into this system, I will leave a link to that up here so that we can check that out. And I'm also going to be even balancing this with a V-mount battery, so this is going to be a pretty crazy setup, but it'll go to show you exactly how much this particular gimbal setup is capable of doing, and I think you guys will find it pretty interesting. So let's get straight into that. All right, so now that we have everything pretty well unboxed, we are now ready to go ahead and set everything up. So just take your gimbal here and the included battery handle. Just line up the pins like this. It'll snap into place, and then you can just twist this a little bit more, lock it in place. It's not going to go anywhere. Then you can just take the included little tripod stand, screw it into the bottom 1/4-20, and now we're all good. Just extend the tripod legs. So for this setup here, what I'm going to do is use the standard plate, and I'll grab this small rig V-mount battery plate. And so I'm just going to open this up a little bit. And then we'll attach the camera here. And so again, this setup is going to be a little bit overboard. Generally speaking, I wouldn't necessarily recommend going this crazy with a setup. Typically, when you're talking about using a gimbal, you're going to want to be holding it for a while, doing maneuvers and other things like that. Having a really heavy setup is going to be hard on your arms. But just to show you the power of this thing, I'm going to be going a little bit overboard and creating a pretty crazy setup for you guys. So now we have the battery mounted, we have our camera. Next step is to attach the quick release plate and it locks into place. Just move the little locking mechanism up to the lock. Now we're all solid. Now we can start connecting some things up. So since we are again running off of this V-mount, let's put the USB-C cable in, wrap this around the camera a couple of times just so that way we're nice and secure. And plug that into the camera's USB-C port. That'll give us charging while we're using the device. The next thing that we want to do is attach the follow focus. So here we have the follow focus connector here, and this will just go on the bottom here. Generally speaking, it may be a little bit easier to do this if you don't have the camera already set up. This is something that I always forget myself, but it's all right. But just make sure that you screw it in all the way and that it's nice and snug, so that way it doesn't wiggle or move when you're doing your focus setup. All right, so we are good to go there. Now just take the follow focus motor, slide that on, and find your focus ring. So for this particular lens, the focus ring is right up here. And so you just want to make sure that the teeth slot in nicely. Screw this down as tight as you can get it, so that way it doesn't move. You can also double check that it's in place. If you turn this outer knob here, it should nicely rotate. And this is one of the things that's a little bit unfortunate about this system, is that generally speaking, just having this setup like this, it's not going to be stable enough for you. So that is why DJI also include this right here, which is going to be a leather strap that you can wrap around your camera lens and keep it tight to the follow focus motor. So highly recommend using this. Next thing is we're going to set up the MatteBox on the system. I'm using the Polar Pro Base Camp. I'm going to just be using the stage 1 and 2 adapter. I'm not going to be using the French flag since that would introduce a little bit too much weight for us here. All right, so for installing the Base Camp, we're just going to be using this filter thread ring. The Suray takes an 82mm filter thread. All right, so now we have that installed. Now we're just going to put on the base camp itself, and then we're just going to take one of our square filters here. We'll put in the VND 2 to 5 stop right there, lock it in. So now we're ready with a pretty standard type of cinema rig here. All right, and so now all we're going to have to do is just simply unlock the motors. You do that by taking the lock and switching it to unlock position, and then we can just relock it in place here. Now we have a perfectly stable platform to start working off of. Our whole setup here, and slide it on from behind. And once you're in place, there's just a little lever on the side that you can lock everything in place. Now it's not going to move. Perfect. So another thing that you may want to also do is use this piece right here. This is a little lens support. It doesn't weigh very much, and for this particular setup, I'm going to be using it since this lens is pretty heavy and having a MatteBox on the end of it adds a little bit of extra weight. I just want to be extra sure that we are stabilizing everything and keeping it nice and steady, not putting too much strain on our camera. And so you can just use the little thumb screw that comes with the system. All right, so now that we have all of that set up, there's just one more thing from the kit that we want to add, and that is going to be the Raven Eye. So the Raven Eye, how it mounts to this system is right at the bottom. So just below here, there's going to be a little slot. You just want to slide it in there and lock it into place. So just take your Raven Eye, put it in. You'll feel it go into the track there, and then just slot it until it clicks into place. Now it's all locked and secured. So that is that. And now we just want to connect all of our cables up here. So take your bunch of cables that has all of the HDMIs. And for the Sony FX3, this has a full-size HDMI, so you want to grab the one that has the full-sized. So one side is going to be full-sized for me, the other side is going to be mini. That's going to go into the Raven Eye and connect it all up. Then we're going to take our USB-C cables and we can just connect them up as well. So one of them is going to go to focus motor. Just click that into one of those USB slots and then connect it to the second slot here on this column. Also, in this big bunch of cables for video, you're also going to see one USB-C cable. This is going to be a right angle one. This goes from the back of the Raven Eye using the right angle side. Just plug that in and then connect that one to the bottom of the RS3 Pro. And now if you aren't using a V-mount and you want to connect directly to the Raven Eye to allow for remote operations using the Raven Eye, you're going to want to take a USB-C cable and connect it to your camera. Since I'm using a V-mount for this demonstration, I'm not going to be doing that, but that's how you would set that up. All right, and so now we have everything perfectly set up. Now we just need to go on to balancing. And now this is, again, like I said, a very heavy and overblown setup. Not something that I would necessarily recommend you guys to do yourselves, but we're going to be doing it on here. And so what I always do is start off by balancing the top here. So always support everything whenever you're loosening things. That way your system doesn't just go and fall on the floor. And so basically the first step of this is to loosen this thumb screw here. And then what I like to do is support the whole system with my hand here. It basically just makes it a lot easier to move across this scale. And you just want to move, if it's tilting back this way, you want to move it down further. If it's going to be tilting the other way, then you just want to move it up. And so you're looking to get it to be like this, where you can leave it by itself and it's going to stand perfectly straight without any intervention from you. So now this is perfectly balanced and we're all good. Now we can move on to the next step. This is the second part of balancing our tilt axis. So right here we have our axis lock. So we're just going to unlock this. Make sure that the tilt axis is also unlocked. And again, make sure that you're always holding onto everything until everything's perfectly balanced. And then you have a little thumb screw here, just roll it back until your camera feels pretty much weightless and it's not moving either forward or backward. And again, it'll take a little bit of practice, but here we are pretty much balanced. Lock that axis off. And then what you want to do to check is just put your camera into a bunch of different angles. If it doesn't move at all like it is here, then you are perfectly balanced and you can move on to the next step. So lock off the tilt axis now, and then we're going to go to the roll. And now for the roll axis, unlock that, and you'll see that we are right now rolling quite heavily to this side here, which means that we have to extend out to the right. So again, I like to support from the bottom. This makes adjusting a lot easier, and we'll just extend to the right here. Try to counterbalance this as best we can. You see that we went a little bit too far. Now we're rolling the other way. So we just got to go back a little bit. And again, this is just kind of a balancing act. We make little adjustments here and there. That is pretty much perfect here. So now you can see that our roll is perfectly balanced, or at least pretty close. And now here is the most complicated and perhaps annoying one, and that's going to be our pan axis. And so for the pan axis, what I would recommend, especially if you're using a really heavy setup like this, is to just use a table and kind of balance it like this. Unlock your pan axis, roll it to a side. It's pushing pretty heavily back at us, so we're just going to extend this a bit, go back to being perfectly flat on the table. All right, we are pretty good here. Yeah. All right, so that is pretty much balanced. So now that we have all of that ready, all right, so what I would recommend doing is turning the gimbal on and then immediately pressing the power button one more time to lock all the axes again. This is going to prevent any issues if you're going with a really heavy setup like this from a lighter setup. That way you have enough time to just push the calibration button, get everything calibrated, and then you can start using the gimbal, and it'll be a lot easier that way. So to calibrate, all you're going to want to do is just press the calibration button. That's going to be at the top left of the screen. And then you're just going to simply push on start calibration. That'll unlock all of the axes. It'll do some tests. If you hear some like loud crunching noises or other things like that, that's normal. That's just what the motors do. So now if you did it right, you'll say gimbal calibration succeeded. And then you can see exactly how good your calibration is, if there's anything that needs some help, and what the motor settings are at. All right, now this is also a good time to mention that you guys are going to want to make sure that you have the Ronin app already downloaded onto your phone. And so I have that right here. If you are just getting this gimbal for the first time, you're going to want to connect using this app to activate it. It'll basically tell you on the gimbal that you need to do that, but just make sure that you go ahead and complete that before you actually really get into using this, especially if you're going to be using it for professional work. So just make sure that you do that, activate your device, and you'll be good to go. And inside of the Ronin app, while we're here, we have a couple of options. So you have Create, you have Connect to Raven Eye. This will allow us to do remote control, which I'll show a little bit later. It also allows us to do a LiDAR profile, so that way if you have the LiDAR rangefinder, you can set up autofocus for your manual focus lenses. You can also do a balance test. You can check the motor parameters, check your user profile, and check any of the status flags or anything like that. So it's a pretty handy little thing to have, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of that. So going on here with some of the features that are built into the RS3 Pro itself. So you'll see here that our tilt, roll, and pan are all calibrated. Our tilt has a pretty high rating of 71, so that means that it's using about 71% of the motor capacity to hold this payload. This is, like I said, a pretty crazy and over-the-top rig. Generally speaking, you're probably not going to be wanting to use something like this all the time, but I did want to show this to you to show you exactly what this thing is capable of doing. Also, another thing to note in here is that if you do go to super smooth, this will basically do a little bit of an extended calibration to give you the absolute smoothest results ever. I don't typically go with super smooth, but if you did want to go that route, you could go and do that right there. All right, now moving over here to the main page. In here on the bottom left quadrant, we have PF, that stands for pan follow. So what that means is that if we pick up the gimbal here and we start rotating to the right, it's going to pan the motors in the direction that we're going, and it's not going to adjust the tilt up or down or anything like that. So this is going to be great for if you're just tracking a simple subject who's moving left to right, and you're not really trying to get any tilts or other sort of fancy things. To the right of that, we have our tracking speed. Usually I like to leave this on medium. I had it on fast before since I was doing some pretty quick gimbal shots, but you can have it as either fast, slow, or medium, and you can also set a custom mode. Above this here, we have our balance, so you can see that our pan, tilt, and roll are all calibrated pretty well. If there are inconsistencies, if there's any issues, you'll see the green bar here go far to one side or the other, and if it gets too far, it'll probably be red. So just make sure that you check this out before you go and do anything. If we swipe down from the top here, you'll see a couple of settings. We have lock. This is to lock the screen off. We have Bluetooth with the camera icon. That's to connect to your camera. You also have a little audio thing. This can put it into silent mode if you don't want to hear all of the bings, or you can leave it in standard mode. And we also have a little cog here. This gives us some more settings. So you can disable selfie mode. What selfie mode is if we just triple tap the trigger on the front, that'll rotate the camera 180 degrees to face towards us. And then if we do it one more time, and then if we just double tap it, it'll point it back to the standard position. So that's what that is. Orbit follow, this is going to be a setting that you would want to use if you have a subject who's still in the middle of a frame and you just want to orbit around them. That will help you out with that. Rotation, you can basically change the direction of your screen here. So this is going to be useful if you're going to mount this to a car or something where it's going to be upside down, so you can get to all of the settings easily. We're not going to be doing that right now. Push mode, you can set any of the axes to be able to be pushed, so push pan or push tilt. Basically, if I just grab this here and I move this over, you'll see that it allows me to do that. If you did not have those turned on, then it wouldn't do that and it would cause an error. So just make sure that if you do want to actually make any adjustments by hand, that you have these settings on. Here we go for horizontal calibration. If you are off center, you can do that and it'll calibrate the horizontal axis for you, so that way your camera is perfectly level with the horizon. Mine is fine right now, so I'm not going to touch that, but focus motor endpoints is something that we do want to do. So for us, we're using a lens with hard stops, and so it can just roll through to each of the hard stops. It'll automatically find that and then create a calibration profile based on that, so that way you can just go from near focus to far focus without having to do any manual input of that. All right, so moving on here, we can also do gimbal auto check, although I am not going to do it right now because we have the V-mount battery on. That's extending our platform way beyond the capabilities of this particular device. So if we were to do this, it would hit the V-mount battery into the back roll arm, and so we're not going to be messing with that right now. But that is something that you can do to be extra sure that your calibration is all right. You can also restore the parameters and reset everything. Here's your language, device information, firmware version, all of that good stuff. By the way, if you do need to update your firmware, that's all done inside of the Ronin app. You don't need to connect to a computer or anything like that. So scrolling up one more time here, on the bottom menu, here we have joystick speed. So right now it's set to medium. This is basically just if you want to find your framing like this. You also have joystick smoothness. You can have it as medium, or you can have it as high, custom, or low. So this is basically just if we go and do a pan there, it's basically how long it takes to go from moving to not moving. So you can see with medium, it has a nice smooth slowdown there. So I like to keep it there. For the dial function, I have it set to focus motor. So basically the dial on the front of this gimbal, if I rotate it forward, it's going to focus in one direction, and if I rotate it backwards, it's going to focus in the other direction. You can also set it to any number of things here: roll axis, pan, tilt, shutter, aperture, ISO. So whatever you want to do, you can do with that. We also have a dial speed, so you can make it slow or fast. I like to keep mine pretty slow. You also have dial smoothness. Again, does the same thing as joystick smoothness. It's basically how long it takes from you giving an input to it actually stopping. The next thing we can do is we can reverse the dial. So say that you're wanting it to be focused to the far, moving to the right, and then focus close being to the left, and it's not that currently. You can just do that and reverse the order. You can also change what the M button does. By default, it's going to lock the screen, but you can have it do any number of things. So those are the settings there. If we scroll over one here to the left, that we see everything that our camera sees. So that is pretty cool. And again, I can just change focus here. And so we can pretty clearly see everything that's going on. You can also change your active track speed to be slower or faster. We can also change some settings here, do tilt follow or portrait follow. So those are those settings. And then if we go here, we have a couple of more features. We can do time lapses. This is really great for if you're doing astrophotography. You can basically set up your camera. You can find a point in the night sky, set a waypoint, then go to another point in the sky, set another waypoint, set a time interval and a total time, and it'll basically just take pictures all throughout the night, going from one point in the sky to the other. This is really cool for creating motion. You can also, of course, do this with cityscapes or anything like that. You have tracking, panorama, So those are some of the features that are available for you there, and that's basically everything that is here in the menus. Again, the M button does screen lock for me, so there's that. And if I push on this button here, since my camera is connected via Bluetooth, it'll start recording or stop recording. So that's another thing that's pretty cool. And then moving this over here, you can see that there's this slider here on this side. So right now we're in the middle at pan follow. If we go up one, this is pan tilt follow. So this does everything that pan follow does, but then it adds in the tilt axis. So if you're trying to get those cool reveal shots where you're looking up and then the camera tilts down, this is how you get those. Or you can go one step further and go all the way down to the bottom, put it into FPV mode. This basically allows all of the motors to work together. So you have pan, roll, and tilt all active at once. This is how you get those really cool and crazy spin shots and other things like that that you may have seen on my channel from time to time. And inside of FPV, we can also change exactly what it does. So you have standard FPV. We also have 3D Roll 360, which is not going to work right now because of the V-mount. We also have portrait mode, and we have a custom mode. So the custom mode can be set up to do whatever you want. You can lock off certain axes or not. All right, and so again, I had promised you guys a bonus tip, and that is going to be with regard to the Raven Eye. So here, if we go connect to Raven Eye, this will take us to our phone settings. We're just going to go over here to Wi-Fi and make sure that you select Raven Eye. If this is the first time that you're doing it, you're going to have to set up a password. It's pretty simple. Just connect right there. Now we go back to the app, and now you'll see that we can see our camera display right here. We also have our focus control here, so we can scroll through the focus and change that. We also have a couple of settings here. We have false color. We also have focus mode. We can apply LUTs here. We can view just red, blue, green channels. We have zebras. So basically all of the standard filmmaking type of things that you want. If you are connected with a USB-C cable to your camera, you'll also see your shutter speed, your ISO and aperture and all of that stuff right down here. Since I have it connected to a V-mount battery, I don't see that stuff, but it is going to be there if you are connected in that way. If we go here to this button here, this recenters our gimbal. If we push this button here, we can go through here and we can change all of the speed of pan, tilt, roll, all of that stuff. We can change our smoothness. We can also enable force mode, and this is one of my favorite features. So say that you are across the room filming an event or something like that, and you're a solo operator. Well, now with this, you can basically just use your phone, pan it around, and you can record all of the scenes that you need to record, all from this app. And so this is something that is super, super cool. I'm not really sure that any other companies really do this, but it's definitely something that I haven't really seen before, and it's something that's really handy for those of us who are solo content creators. So yeah, if you are interested in this, this is definitely something that you can do. Alternatively, if you don't want to do that, you can also just enable a joystick here. And so we can use the joystick to do our pans, tilts, and rolls. The roll control is here on the right side, so if you want to make it off axis, give a Dutch angle or something like that, you can do that. And we can also wirelessly start and stop recording right here using this button, or you can even do tracking with any of the tracking features. So that is something that is absolutely fantastic, and I hope you guys make use of that. But with all that being said, I hope that you guys liked this video and learned something, and if you did, please remember to drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe, and also share the video with all of your friends and anyone else who you feel might get some value out of this content. Also, if you're interested in purchasing anything that I've shown here in this video, I'll be leaving links in the description. And if you do feel like buying anything with those links, it would really help the channel out a lot, and I'd really appreciate it. Additionally, if you want to pick up anything from my personal store at jackofmanytradesmedia.com, you can also go down to the description there and pick up anything there. I have a full setup for the Sony FX3 on there. I'll be putting up one for the Sony a7R5 pretty soon. I'm also going to be producing some LUTs and other things to help you guys out with your creative processes. If you want to pick up any of the pictures that I have on my page, I have a lot of really nice wildlife photos. If you want to get anything like that framed up, I work with a company called Spoke Sound, and I can get you guys set up with one of those pictures if you fill out the form. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Later.